At my 12-week ultrasound, the doctor's hands suddenly froze. Her eyes widened, and the room, once filled with soft machine beeps, fell terrifyingly silent. Without warning, she shut off the monitor, pulled me into a private room, and locked the door behind us. Her voice trembled as she said, "You need to leave your husband. Today. Before it's too late." I laughed nervously, thinking it was some awful misunderstanding. But then she whispered, "I can't explain yet. Not until you see what I saw in your scan." And when she finally showed me, my entire world split open. Stay with us, this story will leave you speechless. Before we start, make sure to hit like and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. I used to think ultrasound rooms were peaceful places, dimmed lights, soft humming machines, the quiet promise of new beginnings. But the moment I lay down on that narrow bed, something felt different. The air was too still, too cold, too heavy. Dr. Reynolds, a woman in her late 40s with calm eyes and steady hands, had always been warm with me during checkups. But today, she wasn't smiling. She barely even greeted me. She just adjusted the gel, picked up the probe, and pressed it against my stomach with a tension I could feel through her gloves. The screen flickered to life. A grainy outline of my baby appeared, tiny, perfect, miraculous. I prepared for the usual reaction, the gentle laughter, the "your baby looks beautiful," the joyful reassurance pregnant women crave. But instead, I watched the blood drain from her face. Her eyes widened. Her hand trembled, actually trembled, against the probe. She leaned closer to the monitor, her breath catching like she'd just seen something impossible. "Is everything okay?" My voice cracked, but she didn't answer. She zoomed in. Then zoomed out. Then zoomed in again, her frown deepening with every pass. I could hear her heartbeat in the silence. Fast. Uneven. Afraid. Doctors don't get afraid. Finally, she set the probe down with a sharp, unsteady exhale. "Emily, I need you to come with me. Right now." A knot formed in my stomach. "What's wrong? What did you see?" She didn't respond. She didn't even remove her gloves. She just grabbed my hand, firmly, urgently, and guided me off the bed. "Please," she whispered, her voice shaking, "just come." She pulled me into her private consultation room, shut the door, and locked it. The click of that lock made my knees weaken. "Doctor, you're scaring me." She turned to me, eyes glossy with panic. "Emily, you need to leave your husband." My heart dropped so violently I felt it in my throat. What? What are you talking about?" "I'm begging you," she said, gripping my shoulders. "Go home, pack your things, and leave him. Today. Before he finds out." I stared at her, stunned. I don't understand. Why would I leave my husband? What did you see in the ultrasound?" She swallowed hard and reached for the printed scan on the desk. "Emily, there is no time to explain." She slid the ultrasound toward me, her fingers trembling. "You'll understand when you see this." And as my eyes lowered to the image, I felt the world tilt beneath me. What she showed me was the beginning of the truth that would destroy everything I thought I knew. I stared at the ultrasound printout, but none of it made sense. It was just shapes, blurred shadows floating in a sea of gray. Nothing that should have turned a doctor pale. Nothing that should have made her hands shake or her voice crack. "Doctor, what am I supposed to be seeing?" Dr. Reynolds didn't answer immediately. She paced the room once, then twice, breathing like someone trying not to panic. Finally, she turned to me, her expression tight with urgency and fear. "Emily, listen to me very carefully." She stepped closer. "You cannot go home and pretend everything is normal. Your life, your safety, depends on leaving your husband today." My mouth went dry. "Please stop saying that and tell me why." She ran a hand through her hair, something I'd never seen her do in all the years she'd been my physician. "If I tell you everything right now, I could put you, and myself, at risk." "Risk? From an ultrasound?" She lowered her voice. "I have seen something in this scan that does not match what your husband told us in his medical history. Something that he has lied about. Something serious." A shiver ran through me. My husband never lied on his forms. He filled out everything honestly. Her eyes softened with pity. No, Emily, he didn't. I felt the room tilt. My husband, Daniel, was the most straightforward man I knew. Predictable, dependable, the kind of man who apologized for showing up 2 minutes late to dinner. He didn't lie. Dr. Reynolds hesitated, then opened a drawer and pulled out a sealed folder. Before every pregnancy, we review potential genetic risks. Your husband signed the consent forms. But when I ran your results today, something didn't add up. What didn't add up? My voice wavered. Doctor, I'm begging you, just tell me. She closed the folder, pressing it flat under her hand. Emily, the inconsistency is too dangerous to ignore. I'm giving you these records, but you must not confront him alone. Fear clawed at my throat. You're talking like he's dangerous. He's not, he would never hurt me. She exhaled shakily. I hope you're right. I truly do. But based on what I saw today, I can't take that chance. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. What do I do? Go somewhere safe. A friend's house. A hotel. Call me when you get there. Then I'll explain everything. I clutched the folder to my chest, feeling it throb with secrets I wasn't ready to uncover. Emily, she whispered, opening the door with trembling fingers, please. Do not underestimate the danger. I stepped into the hallway, the folder heavy in my hand. And for the first time since I married Daniel, I was truly afraid to go home. Before today, if anyone had asked me about my marriage, I would have smiled, softly, maybe shyly, and said I was lucky. Blessed, even. Daniel wasn't the kind of man who swept you off your feet with charm or grand gestures. He was quieter than that, steadier. The kind of man who brought me coffee every morning exactly the way I liked it. 1 sugar, no cream, because he claimed he liked the sound of my first happy sigh. We met 6 years ago at a charity fundraiser, both of us volunteering at the registration table. He was awkward then, fumbling with the name tags, constantly apologizing when he made small mistakes. I found it endearing. Honest. Refreshing. In a world full of polished pretenders and smooth liars, Daniel felt real. He worked in cybersecurity, dull to most people, but he described it like he was guarding invisible doors, protecting people from threats they couldn't see. I used to tease him that he was a digital knight in armor. He always laughed, eyes crinkling at the edges, cheeks flushing pink. That was Daniel, soft, humble, gentle. He never raised his voice. Never made me feel small. Never forgot an anniversary, a birthday, or even the silly little dates, like the day we adopted our cat, Luna, or the first night we fell asleep watching movies on his living room floor. He remembered everything. And he made me feel like the center of his universe. Our house was cozy, filled with warm light and mismatched furniture we thrifted together on weekends. Daniel always said he liked the pieces that had history. I didn't know then how ironic that word would become. When we decided to start a family, Daniel was over the moon. He bought books, hundreds of them, on parenting, nutrition, sleep schedules, baby-proofing. He practically turned our spare room into a research lab. He was nervous about becoming a father, but in the sweet way. The kind where he stayed up late watching tutorials on how to install a car seat even though we didn't own one yet. People used to tell me I'd won the lottery with Daniel. And I believed them. But looking back now, I can see the cracks I never questioned. The locked drawer in his office he said held client information. The nights he worked late without explanation, returning home with a tension in his shoulders he brushed off as long meetings. The way he avoided certain topics, his childhood, his health, his family, with a precision that felt deliberate, though I didn't notice it then. Love makes you blind. Comfort makes you complacent. Trust makes you vulnerable. I never imagined I was living in a carefully curated world, one where Daniel gave me all the details he wanted me to see, and quietly hid the rest. If anyone had told me earlier that a single ultrasound would unravel the truth about my husband, I would have laughed. Because the Daniel I knew would never lie to me. But the Daniel I didn't know? He was about to destroy everything. Pregnancy changes you, your body, your routine, your entire sense of reality. But I didn't expect it to change Daniel. At first, the shifts in his behavior were so subtle I brushed them off as stress. New responsibilities, long work hours, normal things. But as my belly grew, so did the unease in our home. It started with the appointments. Daniel had always insisted on coming with me, even for the simplest checkups. He'd hold my hand during blood tests, carry my coat, sit through every hour-long wait without complaint. But suddenly, he didn't want me going without him. If I scheduled something while he was at work, he'd make me cancel. Once, when the clinic called to offer an earlier appointment, Daniel ended the call for me, smiling politely, before whispering, "Please don't ever go alone. I need to be there." I thought it was sweet, protective even. Now I know better. Then there were the phone messages. Around month 4, he started receiving texts late at night. He'd silence his phone, flip it face down, or walk into the hallway to answer. When I'd ask who it was, he'd say, "Just work," with a tight smile that didn't reach his eyes. Daniel's job was demanding, yes. But cybersecurity didn't require midnight conversations whispered in the bathroom with the water running. One night, I woke to find him sitting on the edge of the bed, head in his hands, breathing hard. "Daniel," I whispered. He jerked like he'd been electrocuted, wiped his face, and said, "Bad dream. Go back to sleep." But his pillow was untouched. He hadn't slept at all. The locked drawer became another shadow in the house. It sat in his home office, small, black, unassuming. At first, he kept paperwork there, or so he said. But as months passed, he grew protective of it. Once, when I reached for his desk to grab a pen, he practically lunged across the room. "Don't open that." His voice was sharp, too sharp. Not like him at all. I froze, surprised. He forced a smile, touched my arm. "Sorry. Sensitive client stuff." Something in his eyes flickered. Fear? Guilt? I didn't know. But it stayed with me. Then there was the doctor switch. When I told him I was thinking about changing obstetricians because Dr. Reynolds' schedule was getting too full, he panicked. I don't think that's a good idea," he stammered. "She knows your history. Switching is complicated. Risky." Risky? For a prenatal checkup? He insisted on calling her office himself, making sure my appointment stayed with her. He even added reminders to his calendar, double-checking them with me every night. I used to think he was doing it out of love, because he cared about the baby. But the morning of the ultrasound, when Dr. Reynolds' face drained of color, when she begged me to leave him, only then did I start wondering, were these just strange behaviors? Or were they warnings I ignored until it was nearly too late? Dr. Reynolds didn't speak at first. She just sat across from me, hands clasped so tightly her knuckles had turned white. The sealed folder lay between us like a bomb neither of us wanted to touch. "Emily," she began slowly, "what I'm about to say may be difficult to understand. But I need you to trust me." My pulse thudded in my ears. "I do trust you. Please, just tell me." She inhaled shakily, then pulled the ultrasound image toward us. "You see this?" She circled a faint cluster of markers, tiny shapes I'd never noticed before. "These are genetic indicators. Completely harmless on their own. But they tell us certain things about the baby's inherited traits." I nodded, though I barely understood. She continued gently, "We compare those markers with the medical information provided by both parents. That's standard protocol. Normally everything aligns perfectly." But something didn't align, I whispered. Her eyes softened with sympathy. "No. Not at all." She opened the folder with trembling fingers. Inside were 2 sets of medical histories, mine and Daniel's. "I reviewed your genetic profile. It matches exactly what we see in the scan. But Daniel's..." She slid his documents next to the ultrasound. "Daniel's does not match anything." I frowned. Maybe it's a mistake? His records, maybe they were mixed up. She shook her head firmly. "I checked. Twice." I swallowed. "I still don't understand what this means." "Emily," she said carefully, "your husband reported having a very specific hereditary condition. A condition that affects certain genetic markers, markers that should appear in your baby." She tapped the image lightly. "They aren't there. Not even faintly. Which means one of 2 things is true." I leaned forward, breath held. "Either," she continued, "your husband falsified his medical information." She paused. "Or he is not the biological father." The room spun. My throat closed. "That's impossible," I whispered. "Daniel is the father." There's no question. The doctor looked at me with something deeper than concern, fear. Emily, I've seen situations where partners hide medical histories, where they lie about previous diagnoses, even fertility issues. But what Daniel wrote here, she tapped his form. These aren't small lies. This is identity-level deception. Identity. A word that hit me like a punch. Why would he lie? I asked, barely breathing. That, she said quietly, is what terrifies me. Silence settled like a weight. Then Dr. Reynolds leaned closer, lowering her voice. Whatever he's hiding, it's big. And if he finds out you know the truth before you're safe. She didn't finish. She didn't need to. My entire world suddenly felt like a stranger I had been living with. I left the clinic with the sealed folder pressed against my chest, as if holding it tightly enough would keep the truth from spilling out. The afternoon sun felt too bright, too loud, too real for the nightmare unraveling in my mind. Daniel's medical records didn't match the ultrasound. That alone was terrifying. But the doctor's face, her fear, haunted me more than the words themselves. At home, I paced the living room for nearly an hour before I finally sat down and forced myself to open the folder again. Daniel's handwriting stared back at me, steady, neat, confident. A man with nothing to hide. Except now I knew better. His reported condition, a rare hereditary disorder, was highlighted in yellow. A condition that affected over a dozen genetic markers, all of which Dr. Reynolds expected to see in our child. Yet our baby showed none of them. Zero. No traces. No partials. Nothing. I reread the form 3 times, hoping I'd misunderstood. Hoping there was some logical explanation. But the more I examined it, the stranger it became. Daniel claimed he'd been diagnosed at 16. Yet when we married, he told me he'd never been hospitalized as a teenager. He claimed multiple annual checkups for this condition, yet I'd never seen a single prescription bottle. Not one doctor's reminder. Nothing. And then something else caught my eye. His listed physician. Dr. Michael H. Weston. I froze. Weston wasn't a genetic specialist. He wasn't even practicing medicine anymore. He'd retired years before I met Daniel. So why would Daniel list him as the overseeing doctor for a lifelong hereditary condition? My stomach twisted. Was Daniel lying about the diagnosis? Or, about the doctor? I turned the page and found something worse. His medical history had no supporting documents attached. No lab results. No immunization record. Not even a standard primary care summary, something every adult has. The entire file felt curated. As if someone had pieced together just enough information to look legitimate, but not enough to verify. A chill ran down my spine. If his medical records were faked, what else had he lied about? His childhood stories that never added up. His estranged parents I'd never met. The way he always avoided discussing anything personal. The locked drawer. The late-night calls. The puzzle pieces were no longer scattered, they were forming a shape. A shape I didn't want to see. I closed the folder, my hands trembling. Who was the man I'd married? And why did he try so hard to hide the truth about himself, even from a doctor? The answer felt dangerously close. Close enough that every instinct inside me whispered the same thing. Whatever Daniel was hiding. It wasn't just deception. It was a threat. The house felt different now, colder, quiet in a way that made my skin crawl. Every clock tick, every creak in the floorboards sounded like a warning. Daniel wouldn't be home for another 3 hours. That should have comforted me. Instead, it terrified me. 3 hours suddenly felt like the last window of safety I had. I needed answers. Real answers. Not the polished stories Daniel had fed me for years. I started in his office. The room was immaculate, too immaculate, every pen aligned, every document stacked perfectly. Daniel always kept things neat, but this level of order felt rehearsed, like a showroom instead of a workspace. My eyes went straight to the locked drawer. I'd never thought about it before. Never questioned why a man who trusted me completely needed a drawer I wasn't allowed to touch. But today, it felt like the center of everything. The heart of whatever he was hiding. I tried the handle. Locked. Of course. I searched his desk for a key, under the keyboard, taped beneath drawers, inside his pencil cup, nothing. My hands shook as I moved books aside, flipped through their pages, checked behind framed photos. Still nothing. Then I noticed something small, a slight scuff on the hardwood floor near the filing cabinet. As if it had been pulled out recently. I kneeled and tugged it forward. Behind it, taped to the back panel, was a thin silver key. My breath caught. For a moment, I just stared at it, as if touching it would unleash something irreversible. Then I slid it into the drawer's lock. The click echoed in the silent room. Inside was not what I expected. No client files. No work notes. No harmless paperwork. Instead, there were passports, 3 of them. All with Daniel's photo. All with different names. My heart slammed against my ribs. Next to them lay sealed envelopes stuffed with cash, tens of thousands of dollars in crisp bills. And beneath the money, a prepaid phone, its screen dark but recently used. I swallowed hard, forcing myself to keep digging. A small notebook rested at the bottom of the drawer. I opened it with numb fingers. Dates. Locations. Single-line notes. Do not slip. No more mistakes. She must not suspect. My vision blurred. Was this about me? About the baby? A wave of nausea rolled through me. I snapped the notebook shut, my heart beat wild. Whatever this was, it wasn't normal. It wasn't explainable. It wasn't safe. Daniel wasn't who I thought he was. Not even close. And the more I uncovered, the more certain I became. The life he built with me wasn't a marriage. It was a cover. I sat frozen on the floor of Daniel's office, surrounded by pieces of a life I had never known existed. 3 passports. Stacks of cash. A burner phone. A notebook filled with warnings and coded messages. Every object felt like it carried a pulse, throbbing with a truth I wasn't ready to face. But I had no choice. Because whatever Daniel had been hiding, it was bigger than an affair, bigger than a lie, bigger than anything I could have imagined. When my heart finally stopped racing, I reached for the burner phone. My hands trembled as I pressed the power button. It flickered to life, no password. Just a blank home screen and a single message thread. 1 contact. No name. Just a symbol. My stomach tightened. I opened the thread. There were dozens of messages, some deleted, others half erased, like someone trying to cover their tracks. The most recent one was from 2 nights ago. Status. Daniel, she doesn't know. The ultrasound is tomorrow. Make sure everything is controlled. Daniel, it will be. My throat closed. She doesn't know. Was that me? I scrolled further. Keep the file locked. Do not deviate. Daniel, I won't. No mistakes this time. This time. The phrase chilled me. I kept scrolling. Daniel, if she asks questions. Distract her. Delay. Do not let her learn the truth until we're ready. My breath trembled. Delay what? Truth about what? Who was? I clicked on the contact info. No number. No email. Just the symbol again, like a ghost. I dropped the phone, chest tight. I needed answers, real ones, before Daniel came home. So I kept searching. In the back of the drawer, beneath the notebook, was a folder labeled, Documents for Transfer. Inside were forms filled with my name. My signature forged with frightening accuracy. My maiden name. My parents' address. Papers that painted a picture of a woman preparing to move overseas. But I had never seen them. Then I found something worse. A medical file. Not mine. Daniel's. The real one. It listed every detail Daniel had tried so hard to hide, including one line that stole the air from my lungs. Patient diagnosed with permanent infertility at age 24. Infertility. Permanent. I stared at the word until it blurred. Daniel couldn't have children. Ever. So if he knew that, if he knew before we conceived, then the messages made sense. The behavior. The fear in Dr. Reynolds' eyes. The way Daniel never missed a single appointment. This wasn't about protecting me. This was about control. My vision swam as I sank back against the desk. The truth was no longer hiding in shadows. It was right in front of me, clear as day. Daniel wasn't preparing for fatherhood. He was preparing for something else entirely. Something dark. Something calculated. Something dangerous. And my baby was at the center of it. By the time the garage door rumbled open, Panic had already carved itself into my bones. I shoved everything back into the drawer, the passports, the money, the burner phone, my fingers fumbling, heart hammering so loudly I could barely hear. The lock clicked shut a second before Daniel walked into the house. "Emily," he called out, cheerful, too cheerful. "I picked up dinner. Thought you might be hungry." His voice drifted down the hallway. I forced myself to breathe. Act normal. Smile. Don't let him look too closely. "I'm in your office," I said, stepping into the doorway before he could enter fully. If he walked in and saw the shifted furniture, the barely aligned drawer, he'd know. Daniel appeared with 2 takeout bags in hand, eyes warm in a way that suddenly felt rehearsed. "There you are." He leaned in to kiss my cheek. His lips felt colder than I remembered. "You okay?" he asked. "Your voice sounds off." I swallowed. "Just tired." His eyes flicked past me, toward the drawer. My heart nearly stopped. "You shouldn't be standing so much," he said softly, touching my arm. "You need to take care of yourself. And the baby." Something about the way he said the baby made my skin crawl. I stepped back. "Daniel, can I ask you something?" He smiled gently. "Anything." "Your medical condition," I said slowly. "The hereditary disorder you listed on the forms, what exactly is it?" For a split second, less than a blink, his expression faltered. Then the smile returned, polished and calm. "Why are you asking about that?" "No reason," I lied. "Dr. Reynolds mentioned something today, and I realized I didn't know the details." His jaw tightened the way it did when he was choosing his words carefully. "It's nothing serious," he said. "I told you, it's just something I monitor. Why bring it up now?" "I just want to understand," I said. "That's all." His gaze sharpened, subtle, but unmistakable. "What did the doctor say, exactly?" The air felt heavy. Dangerous. "She just asked routine questions," I replied, voice steady despite the tremor in my chest. Daniel stepped closer. "Too close. You're lying." My breath hitched. He leaned in, eyes searching mine. "Something's bothering you. You never ask about my health." "Never." His tone dropped. "What happened at the appointment?" I forced a smile, brittle and thin. "Nothing. Really." His hand lifted as if to cup my cheek, then froze in midair, suspicion darkening his eyes. "Emily, if there's something you're not telling me, you need to say it now." My stomach twisted. He could feel it. The shift. The fear. The truth clawing at the edges. And for the first time since I'd known him, I was afraid of my own husband. That night, long after Daniel fell asleep beside me, I lay wide awake, staring at the ceiling. His breathing was steady, calm, almost too calm. Like a man who had everything exactly the way he wanted it. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I was sharing a bed with a stranger. At 2:14 a.m., my phone buzzed on the nightstand. I froze. Daniel slept lightly. Even the softest sound sometimes woke him. Carefully, inch by inch, I slid my hand toward the phone. When I glanced at the screen, my heart stopped. Dr. Reynolds. I slipped out of bed, clutching the phone, moving as quietly as possible. I padded down the hallway, into the bathroom, and locked the door behind me. My hands trembled as I answered. "Doctor." I whispered. Her voice came through in a rush. "Emily, are you alone?" "Yes. Daniel's asleep." She exhaled sharply, as if relieved. "Thank God. I've been reviewing your scans again. And I need to tell you something I didn't want to say in the clinic." My stomach tightened. "What is it?" "I pulled your husband's medical files from the National Registry," she said. "The real ones. Not the ones he submitted to us." The room spun. You found something?" "I found everything." Her voice trembled. "Emily, your husband's file was flagged, twice, for fraud. His reported diagnosis? Fake. His listed physician? Retired before Daniel even turned 20. None of it is real." My breath hitched. I don't understand. Why would he lie about something like that?" "Because," she whispered, "the real file shows something completely different." Silence stretched until I couldn't stand it. "Tell me." "Daniel was treated for infertility. Not temporary. Permanent. He cannot biologically father a child. Ever. I pressed a hand to my mouth to keep from crying out. He knew this before your pregnancy, she continued. He knew it at the time of conception. And Emily, he did not disclose it. That is not a small omission. That is intentional deception. My knees weakened. So the baby. I couldn't finish. Your child is healthy, she said. But whatever Daniel is trying to control, whatever he's hiding, he already knows the baby isn't his. A cold wave washed over me. This is why I told you to leave, she whispered. Men who go this far to hide infertility, they don't react rationally when confronted. They become volatile. Dangerous. My breath shook. What do I do? You need to get somewhere safe. Today. Right now, if you can. A floorboard creaked in the hallway. My blood turned to ice. Doctor, I whispered, I think he's awake. I froze in the bathroom, the phone still pressed to my ear, my pulse thundering in my throat. The floorboard outside creaked again, slow, deliberate. Dr. Reynolds' voice sharpened with alarm. Emily? Are you safe? I swallowed hard. I don't know. I ended the call before Daniel could hear anything, slipped the phone into my robe pocket, and forced myself to breathe. After a few seconds, the hallway went quiet again. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe he'd just rolled over in bed. Or maybe he was standing outside the bathroom door, listening. I waited. 10 agonizing seconds. 20. 30. Nothing. When I finally cracked the door open, the hallway was empty. The bedroom door was shut. The house was silent. But I knew sleep wasn't coming. Not tonight. Not ever, until I understood exactly what I was living with. I tiptoed back to Daniel's office. This time, the fear didn't slow me down, it sharpened me. Every instinct screamed that whatever was happening was already worse than anything I suspected. I unlocked the drawer again, hands trembling less than before. The burner phone. The passports. The money. All of it told one story. Daniel had built a life beneath our life. And he'd done it with precision. But now, I needed more. Something concrete. Something that explained what he was planning. The notebook lay on top, the pages filled with cryptic lines. But I noticed now that some dates matched my medical appointments. Each ultrasound. Each blood test. Review results. Update documents. Ensure compliance. Compliance with what? I dug deeper into the drawer and found a thin metal USB drive taped beneath a false bottom. My breath caught. Carefully, I peeled it loose. I plugged it into Daniel's laptop. A password prompt blinked at me. I tried his usual passwords. Our anniversary. Luna's name. My birthday. Nothing. Then, on instinct, I typed the last 7 digits of the burner phone's serial number. The screen unlocked. A single folder appeared. Primary files, do not share. I clicked. Inside were dozens of documents, scanned IDs, foreign visas, encrypted spreadsheets, but one file stood out. Emily_case_prep. My blood turned cold. I opened it. Inside was a detailed profile of me. My social security number. My medical history. My parents' names. My old addresses. My employment records. Even notes about my habits, what time I woke up, the grocery store I preferred, how often I went out alone. One line froze my breath entirely. Due date, confirm transfer timeline. Transfer. That same word from the folder earlier. Transfer what? Me? The baby? Below it was another note. If non-compliant, initiate fallback protocol. Fallback protocol. The words looked harmless on the screen, but every instinct inside me screamed danger. My hands shook violently. I scrolled further. Photos. Dozens of them. Me leaving the house. Me entering the clinic. Me carrying groceries. Me sleeping on the couch, taken from inside the house. A strangled gasp escaped my throat. Daniel had been tracking me. Watching me. Documenting every part of my life like a project he was managing. Or preparing to take. Suddenly, behind me, the floor creaked again. Slow. Heavy. Someone was standing in the doorway. Emily. Daniel's voice came from behind me, soft, controlled, almost gentle. But gentleness had never sounded so terrifying. I spun around so fast the chair slammed into the desk. Daniel stood in the doorway, his silhouette outlined by the hallway light. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes, they were dark. Focused. Calculating. "What are you doing up?" he asked quietly. My throat tightened. I could still see the open file on the laptop behind me. My file. Every secret, every detail of my life catalogued like data for an experiment. I couldn't sleep, I whispered. His eyes flicked to the drawer. The laptop. The USB drive. And I watched the exact moment he realized what I'd seen. He didn't shout. He didn't lunge. He didn't panic. He smiled. A slow, unsettling smile that crawled across his face like a shadow. "You went through my things." I stepped back instinctively. "Daniel, what is all of this?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he closed the office door gently behind him, the soft click echoing like a scream. "Emily, sit down." "No." His smile vanished. For the first time, I saw something behind his eyes. Not anger. Not sadness. Something colder. Something practiced. "Fine," he said. "Then I'll explain while you stand." He walked past me and shut the laptop, almost affectionately, as if it were a child misbehaving. "You weren't supposed to see those files." "Not yet." "Yet." My voice cracked. "Daniel, the doctor called. She told me that I'm infertile," he finished calmly. "Yes. I assumed she'd figure it out after the ultrasound." My blood turned to ice. "So you knew? You knew you could never be the father?" He nodded. "Of course." I stared at him, stunned. "Then why did you pretend? Why didn't you tell me the truth?" His eyes softened with something I might have mistaken for pity if I didn't know better. "Because you wouldn't have stayed." My stomach twisted violently. He kept talking, steady, reasonable, like we were discussing taxes or dinner plans. "When I met you, you were perfect. Stable. Predictable. Someone who followed routines. Someone who could carry a child well." He paused. "Someone who wouldn't ask too many questions." "What does that mean?" I whispered. Daniel sighed, as if disappointed I hadn't solved the riddle myself. "The baby isn't mine genetically," he said. "But that's irrelevant. What matters is the timeline." "Timeline for what?" "For the transfer," he said simply. The same word again. "Transfer." "Daniel, what transfer?" My voice was barely audible. He stepped closer, lowering his voice like he was sharing a bedtime secret. "The organization I work for needs infants. Healthy ones. From mothers who won't fight back." My heart nearly stopped. "You were selected, Emily. Carefully. Years ago." I shook my head, tears burning hot trails down my cheeks. "No. No, this is insane." He reached out gently, brushing a tear with his thumb. "Don't cry," he whispered. "You've done everything right. And once the baby is born, everything will be over." "Over?" I choked. "Yes," he murmured. "Your part in this will be complete." The room spun. Daniel wasn't just lying. He wasn't just manipulating. He was planning to take my baby. I don't remember leaving Daniel's office. One moment I was staring into the eyes of a man I no longer recognized, and the next, I was in the hallway, heart pounding, breath shallow, vision tunneling. His words echoed in my head like poison. "Once the baby is born, your part in this will be complete." Complete. As if I were an assignment. A vessel. A replaceable piece in a monstrous plan. I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I had to get out of that house. Tonight. Before he noticed the shift in my eyes, the fear in my voice, the truth that I knew. But escape required calm I did not have. I forced myself to breathe, forced my trembling hands to stay still as I walked back into the bedroom. Daniel followed a minute later, his composure flawless. "You should sleep," he said softly, like a tender husband. "Stress isn't good for the baby." The words made my skin crawl. "I will," I murmured. He watched me with that unsettling calmness for several seconds before climbing into bed. I waited until his breathing settled, steady, rhythmic, the pattern I knew by heart. But I didn't trust it. Not tonight. Not ever again. Slowly, silently, I slipped out from under the covers. I grabbed my phone, charger, and the folded prenatal folder Dr. Reynolds had given me. I tucked them into the inside pocket of my coat. I didn't bother taking clothes. Every second mattered. Every sound felt like a scream in the silent house. As I crept toward the door, I glanced back. Daniel wasn't asleep. His eyes were slightly open, watching me through slits, testing me, tracking my movements. I didn't acknowledge it. I just kept walking. My fingers trembled as I unlocked the front door. The click was too loud. Too sharp. But Daniel didn't move. Or pretended not to. When I stepped into the cold night air, my lungs expanded for the first time in hours. I wanted to run, scream, collapse, but I didn't. I walked fast but steady, like a woman heading to her car for something she forgot. Only when I reached the end of the block did I dare look back. Daniel was standing in the doorway. Barefoot. Expression unreadable. Watching me leave. No shouting. No chasing. Just watching, as if he already knew where I was going. As if this was still part of his plan. My phone buzzed in my hand. A text from Dr. Reynolds. I booked you a room. Come straight here. Do not go anywhere else. I tightened my coat and headed into the night, every step carrying the weight of a terrifying truth. I wasn't escaping a husband. I was escaping a trap I'd been placed in years ago. The motel room Dr. Reynolds booked for me was small, dim, and smelled faintly of old carpet. But for the first time in weeks, I locked a door and felt a flicker of safety. I sat on the bed, arms wrapped around my stomach, whispering promises to the child who had suddenly become the target of something unthinkable. Dr. Reynolds arrived 20 minutes later, still in her scrubs. Her face was tight with urgency. We don't have long, she said, closing the door behind her. I've contacted someone who can help, a federal investigator. Daniel isn't just lying, Emily. He's tied to a trafficking network. Infants. Identities. Lives. My heart clenched. Why me? Why my baby? She exhaled, sitting beside me. They target women who are isolated. Predictable. Easy to monitor. Daniel didn't fall in love, he selected you. The words hit harder than any scream. Before I could respond, a sharp knock rattled the door. 3 knocks. Slow. Even. My blood ran cold. Dr. Reynolds motioned for silence, stepping carefully toward the peephole. She froze. It's him, she whispered. My pulse thundered. Another knock, harder this time. Emily. Daniel's voice came through the door, calm and chilling. Open the door. We need to talk. Dr. Reynolds grabbed my arm. Don't say a word. Stay behind me. She pulled out her phone and dialed a number. This is Reynolds. He's here. Send them now. Daniel's voice softened, dripping with manipulation. You're scared. I understand. But you're confused, Emily. You're making dangerous choices. Open the door before things get worse. He jiggled the handle. The metal shook violently. Then, silence. For 5 agonizing seconds, nothing. Suddenly, Daniel's voice came from the window behind us. You shouldn't have run. We spun around, just as blue and red lights drenched the room in flashing colors. Tires screeched outside. Doors slammed. Shouts erupted. FBI. Step away from the window. Daniel bolted, disappearing from view. Agents swarmed the motel, flashlights slicing through the darkness. Within moments, 2 agents burst into the room, ushering us to safety. Through the open doorway, I watched as Daniel was tackled to the ground in the parking lot, wrists forced behind him. He didn't fight. He didn't yell. He just stared at me. Expression blank. Cold. Almost. Disappointed. As they loaded him into the squad car, an agent approached me. You did the right thing leaving when you did, he said. This group has taken dozens of infants over the years. You and your child were next. I felt my knees buckle. Dr. Reynolds caught me before I fell. For the first time since that ultrasound, the truth settled in. I wasn't running anymore. I was finally safe. The weeks after Daniel's arrest felt surreal, like stepping out of a nightmare only to realize daylight still hurt your eyes. I stayed with Dr. Reynolds at first. She refused to let me be alone. Federal agents visited often, asking questions, gathering evidence, piecing together the life Daniel had built out of lies. Every answer felt like reopening a wound, but every truth also set me free. The organization Daniel worked for unraveled quickly under investigation. Files, transactions, encrypted communications, they all traced back to a network that traded identities, infants, false documents, and unattached mothers who could be manipulated. I had been one of their targets. A planned acquisition. Not a wife. Not a partner. A candidate. The knowledge hollowed me at first. But slowly, painfully, healing took its place. Dr. Reynolds became more than a doctor, she became my anchor. My only constant in a world that had been rewritten overnight. She attended every appointment, every interview with investigators, every moment I felt too weak to stand. "You saved your child's life," she told me one afternoon, squeezing my hand. "Never forget that." Her words became a mantra. Months passed. My belly grew. My strength returned, quietly, steadily, like sunlight creeping through closed blinds. When labor finally came, it wasn't fear I felt. It was resolve. My daughter entered the world on a soft spring morning, tiny fingers, strong lungs, and eyes that blinked up at me with a kind of ancient knowing, as if she understood exactly what we had survived together. I named her Hope. Because she was the first truth in a life built on someone else's deception. Holding her, I realized something profound. Daniel had stolen years of my life. But he would not steal my future. After his conviction, the lead investigator handed me a sealed envelope Daniel had requested be given to me. I hesitated to open it for days. When I finally did, it contained only a single sentence. "You were never meant to escape." For the first time, the words didn't terrify me. They empowered me. Because I had escaped. I had survived. I had protected the one life that mattered more than anything. Now, on quiet evenings, I sit by the window with Hope sleeping in my arms, watching the world outside, peaceful, ordinary, honest. There are no secrets in my home anymore. No hidden drawers. No monitoring. No fear. Just laughter. Soft baby breaths. And freedom. The future is unwritten, but this time, I get to write it myself.